We begin with politics this evening, not American politics, but French politics and European politics. French citizens will go to the polls this Sunday to cast their ballot in what could be the most highly contested presidential election in the country's history. The 11 candidates include Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen, who are running neck and neck. The vote takes place at a time when the French people are on high alert following yesterday's terrorist attack in Paris, which left a police officer dead. Jane Hartley is a former United States ambassador to France. Philippe Corbé is a correspondent for French radio, RTL. Alessia Lefébure is director of the Alliance at Columbia University. And from Paris, our friend, the philosopher, author, and filmmaker, Bernard-Henri Lévy. I am pleased to have them here as we look forward to the election, which takes place, the first part of this election, on Sunday. Bernard, tell me what the mood is in France as you see it from Paris, and what's the prospect as we look at it this evening?
The mood, first of all, is very sad. It is a mood of sorrow because of the terrorist attack of yesterday night and because of the death of this brave policeman and the two others who were heavily wounded. So there is a sort of veil of darkness on France and on Paris today, which you can really touch with your hands. This is the general mood. Now the prospect is that Mr. Macron is still running ahead. Not exactly neck to neck with Marine Le Pen. Marine Le Pen is a few points behind him. So you have Macron ahead, Marine Le Pen number 2, and you are very close to them in this handkerchief, which is this poll today, the extreme leftist Mr. Mélenchon and the classical liberal Mr. Fillon.
Is there anyone trending? Does anyone have momentum?
Yes, that seems to be. This is, of course, the good question, and there is a momentum since 1 week in favor of Emmanuel Macron, an image of progressivism, of liberalism, and of youth, which clearly matches with some expectation in France. This is the long trend, in 1 week, momentum. Since yesterday night, there is probably a sort of momentum, but not so strong as it could have been expected for Mrs. Le Pen. This terrorist attack yesterday was aimed at that. ISIS votes for Le Pen. ISIS and Le Pen are sort of twins. And the aim, the target of Daesh yesterday night was clearly to improve the vote for Le Pen. I think ISIS failed in a way because the momentum is not as big as expected.
So what do you think the impact will be of this attack?
Well, I would say that Madame Le Pen, Mrs. Le Pen, may win, but with several conditions. She needs to have a low
lead in the Sunday vote.
Yeah, she may lead and may win eventually, but she needs a very low turnout. And I don't know if the attacks yesterday night will really lead the French people to stay at home Sunday. I don't know, but that's an important question, the turnout Sunday. And the other thing is, in fact, if she wants to win in 2 weeks, she wants to be, with Fillon, the conservative candidate, and not Macron. So there are two conditions, and I don't know if the two conditions are really, if we can find the two conditions on Sunday to give her the hope to win in 2 weeks. I think she's still trailing behind Mr. Macron, and Macron has not been defeated by the attack yesterday night. He's still a front-runner, of course.
President Obama called Macron?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. What impact might that have?
President Obama made it quite clear he was not endorsing any candidate in this race. I do know, because when I was there and subsequently, President Obama is incredibly popular in France. And at one point, there was a beginning of a write-in campaign. I think you may have seen it, with posters all over Paris.
But at the same time, he went and campaigned in a way against Brexit. And it didn't have the kind of result, partly because the people appealed to, the young people, did not vote or
Listen, I think it's a positive, but I would go back, and I don't remember what one of the previous guests said this. I mean, Macron has been leading pretty consistently. Now, it has been a very tight lead, and he and Le Pen have been neck and neck, a point or two apart. Fillon has come back a little bit recently. I think the most positive poll showed him at 20, so maybe 3 or 4 points behind. And Mélenchon had some momentum, which may have stopped, and I think Bernard is right, that most recently Macron in the last few days has the momentum. And it's important, I think, as you look at Macron as a candidate and how he's tried to portray himself. I worked with him quite a bit when I was over there. What will the future of France be?
Hope.
It's hope.
Yeah.
And that's where it is similar to Obama. It's optimism. It's hope. It's we obviously have to make some changes, but it's particularly addressed at some of the young people in terms of what he's going to do in terms of education, what he's going to do in terms of apprenticeships. And I don't think the attacks. I mean, I have not seen a poll in the last day or so, but. We had elections when I was there, both after Bataclan, November 13th, and after Nice. There were elections in France. It did not really move the needle.
Let me talk about Mélenchon. What kind of impact, and who does he take votes from, this popularity that he has shown, surprisingly, even though he's been a long-time fixture in French politics?
Yes, surprisingly, he's taking votes with the young people, some of the other young people.
He's sort of the Bernie Sanders, some have said?
Some have said that. I would personally strongly disagree, because when you look at, I mean, of course there is something of that, like a senior politician, very experienced, chevronné, but getting the votes of the young people. But at the same time, if you look at his program, it has nothing to do with the Sanders. Sanders will be more similar to what Benoît Hamon, the socialist. Mélenchon is strongly nationalist. So it's not a France of diversity. It's not a France of the minorities. It's not a France of tolerance. He's very hardcore on the secularism. In his conception of secularism, there is no religion at all. These things, I don't think we can make it closer to what Sanders had in his program. At the same time, I would completely agree with Jane. Half of the young people, those who succeed, those who are all over the world in universities, those who are at Columbia, in New York, etc., they love Macron. Mm-hmm. Macron for them is the future, the startup world, the technology. They embrace completely this kind of France that helps and the momentum of these young people. The other half, those who feel a little bit threatened by the globalization, those who struggle with the employment, those who are scared about their future, then those vote for Mélenchon. Mm-hmm. There is no other alternative for them.
Bernard, there's been some slippage in the campaign of Le Pen and in her popularity. Is it insignificant, but nevertheless, what caused it?
One thing you have to remember is that 1 month ago, Marine Le Pen was ahead of the race. Today she's 20% or so. 1 month ago she was 30%. So she has a very negative momentum since a few weeks. This is very important to know. She was till yesterday night, till ISIS decided to vote for her, she was losing speed every day. This is one thing which is very important. Number two, you asked about the phone call of Barack Obama to Macron. In France, I'm sure of one thing. It is much better to be endorsed by President Obama than by President Trump. Marine Le Pen is endorsed by President Trump. Not good for her. She is endorsed by Putin and Trump. Yeah. And really it was very bad news for her, both of the endorsement. Macron is endorsed by Obama, which is a much more decent endorsement. Number three, one thing I would like to say at the end of this campaign is that it was a terrible campaign. Yes. It was probably the worst campaign I ever saw in France. Maybe in America, this sort of campaign. You saw that before us, when arguments are replaced by punchline, when the debate is considered a sort of match of box or something. This was the atmosphere of this campaign, and it was not really worth and at the level of the of the real Republican and democratic spirit in France, as your last campaign in America, which was also hopeless. These are the fundamentals of this campaign. In this devastated political landscape, there is Macron, who is swimming up.
Okay, let me ask you, all of you, this. She has essentially, she's an anti-immigration candidate. She talks about what it means to be French as a campaign. She talks about her anti-European Union philosophy. People talk about a French exit from the European Union to follow Brexit. Can she seriously win this? Does she have a real chance, unlike any National Front candidate before? Go ahead.
I think well, let's say she may win. I don't want to say that she's going to win, but she may win. We have to take she could win. We have to take into consideration the fact that she could win. And what happened last night in Paris is a way to remind us that a lot of things could happen in the next 2 weeks. So we don't know exactly what's going to be the mood of the French voters next Sunday and the Sunday in 2 weeks. So she could win, but she is... I'm not sure that her anti-Euro, anti-European Union Frexit campaign has been really successful, because she has tried, as Bernard-Henri Lévy said, she has tried to run with this platform. It didn't really work well, because in fact she came back in the last 10 days in the core values of her campaign: immigration, insecurity, Islam, and etc. Because she realized that the only way to make the electorate stick around her is to bring back the far right basic of her party. But when she tried to expand to economic issue and European issue, it didn't work that well, in fact.
If she should win, though, and exits the European Union, exits the euro, I mean, does it destroy both?
I think it's a huge problem. First of all, I agree with you, and I think just one point that, and Bernard, I think, talked about it. France is a different election because it has a second round. Right. So it would be like if in our election day...
I'm actually talking about she wins the second round and becomes president.
I think the second round makes it much harder for her, and that's what we've seen in terms of the Front National in other elections. I think if she wins, it's a huge problem for Europe. Absolutely. I mean, she's talking not only about perhaps leaving the European Union, she's talking about going back to the franc. I mean, frankly, it's not just a huge problem for the European Union, it's a huge problem for France, and economically. It also, I know when I was there, France was probably our key partner in terms of counter-ISIL, both on a military front and on a domestic security, intelligence, counterterrorism front. That would be a huge blow. France is very important in terms of what it does in the world. And what she would do is try to take France both economically, foreign policy, militarily out of the world.
Well, the idea of Europe came in part from French. Go ahead.
The polls, now the last one, they say that she could win only if she's against Mélenchon, right? That she would not make it against Macron, and she would not make it against Fillon. Yet, even if she doesn't win this time, a lot of people are worried that she might win in 5 years from now, right? So I think the important lesson to keep for us is that with this election, devastating campaign, is showing that the political parties are meaningless to the people. The traditional division, left or right, with the socialist. I mean, all this traditional. You have seen the Benoît Hamon score. The Socialist Party used to be very powerful in France, and even Fillon, in the end, he is not doing as well as his predecessors, not only because of the scandals. I think people don't, the traditional divide between the left, progressive, and social welfare, and the right, more conservative on the moral values and liberal on the economic point of view, this is not working anymore. So we have, as was said before, on the one hand, a few candidates of the future, and the candidate of the nostalgia of the past. And this doesn't match the political party division. So I guess the important lesson, even if Marine Le Pen is not elected now, is that we have to prepare for 5 years, for the next election.
The turnout, though, I don't know who you mentioned it, and I know Bernard mentioned it. is key, because
Yes.
when we have surprises in these elections, it's when usually there's a low turnout.
That's what happened in 2002 when National Front was qualified for second one with a low turnout.
And they won, they got into, I think,
May
16%.
may I take a bet, my dear Charlie?
Yes. You can, okay, go ahead. Give me your.
I take the bet.
Offer the bet.
Take the bet.
I take the bet tonight that Marine Le Pen will not be president of France. No chance, no way that she can become president of France. She is not perceived, really, she is not perceived as a so serious candidate. She is not perceived as so different from her father than she pretends to be. And number three, she is perceived more and more as having a very strange relationship with her own country. There is one thing which begins to enter in the minds of the voters, which is that since 5 years, each time our country, France, has to face an enemy in a diplomatic ground or on military ground, she systematically took the party of the enemy. When France had soldiers on the ground or in the air in Libya, when France has special forces in Syria, when France has a real arm wrestle with Putin about Ukraine, she is always on the camp of the enemy. And the French are patriots, and they know that she is not a patriot.
Okay, but let me ask you this.
She is not so much.
Do you believe she'll make the second round?
I think so, yes, probably because of the vote of Daesh, because of what happened last night. But she will not be so much, if she is at the second round, she will not have such a big advance related to François Fillon. François Fillon is not a bad candidate. François Fillon, I do not vote for him, but he has a good program. He would be a decent president and Republican. So she will not. If she is at the second round, it will be with short advance.
And Macron would be the toughest person for her in terms of her possibilities in the second round?
Macron is beating her now. Bernard, he's beating her in the second round by about 20 points, I think, at the moment.
But we're going to see Sunday night if she's at 28, 29% of the vote and Macron is at, 22, 23. It's going to be much more difficult. And we don't know what the right-wing voters, the right-wing members of the Conservative Party are going to do.
These are people who might have supported Fillon?
Oh, yeah. Some voters of Fillon may vote Le Pen, but it would be very, very difficult to imagine.
The question is, will they vote also?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the more, because, or vote for none of the above.
Other than what we have talked about before in terms of immigration and in terms of what are the big issues of this campaign, what else are they talking about as issues?
Oh, what they talk about or what the French want to hear about?
Well, go ahead.
Because they have talked about meaningless things most of the time, but the concern for the French are not different from the concern of the Americans, of the other Europeans today. And I think it's a sort of whole package with all the threats related to the globalization. You put into this cultural identity, Islam, you put into this the euro, you put into this European Union perceived as a danger for the economics. You put into this all sorts of unemployment, the fact that the recession is still there. François Hollande has not managed to change this. Economic opportunities, job. I mean, it's always the same. I think the French are like anybody else.
Well, go ahead.
During a campaign, it's the case everywhere in the world. When you are able to bring the conversation on your personal team, when you are setting the agenda, in fact, of the campaign, when you're leading, you're the one who decide what's the conversation. We don't know exactly what the conversation in this campaign. I couldn't say, the main topic of the campaign was that or that. We don't know because it's very difficult. The campaign, as Bernard-Henri Lévy said, was nasty. We talk about the price of the suit of the candidate of the Conservative Party. It's crazy. We don't know if... yeah, that's true. And people...
The biggest issue was that, for
exactly,
sure.
Exactly. The biggest issue, one of the big issues of the campaign was that. It's crazy.
The biggest issue was to know when he gave back his suits to the tailor. The biggest issue was to know if it was the proper suits or others. These
crazy.
Officially, these were the issues, which is crazy.
Mr. Fillon accepted suits and.
But the real deep issue. But the real deep issue underneath, because we are not completely lost in translation, thanks God, we French, the biggest issue underneath were probably foreign policy issues,
okay, that's
nationalistic or
Putin.
European.
But define the foreign policy issue.
Putin or not. Yes, I think they were governing secretly the debate. And you have Marine Le Pen, who is very favorable to Putin, François Fillon, who has some indulgence to Putin, with Putin also, Mélenchon same, and you have Mr. Macron, who knows more or less who is Putin and how France has other allies than Putin.
She went to the Kremlin. She was invited to the Kremlin a few weeks before the election. When you think that the president of Russia is trying to say that
affect the French election.
Yes. That when
you mean the Russian president would try to affect the election of another country?
But I think
that's very strange. That's very new.
I agree on the Putin comment, but I tend to think, now I've been gone for a long time, and Bernard, you're there, this is more on the role of France in the future, and what will in particular be the economic role of France in the future, and what will be the economic benefits, or what changes, because as we know, the French people have been sitting with around 10% unemployment for a very long time now. And, you know, when President Hollande decided not to run, it really wasn't because of his foreign policy or his national security or his counterterrorism. It was all because of where the economy was, and it wouldn't budge. So if you look at these four candidates, they have very different visions of what they want to do on the economy in France. You know, with Fillon and Macron probably being the most similar, but Macron definitely being more centrist. Mélenchon and Le Pen are at both ends, but have some of the same policies.
And Fillon.
Fillon is Macron is more center, Fillon is more center right. Yeah. But when I was there, and we did quite a bit with Ipsos at the time, and once again it could have changed, a huge amount was, what is the future of France? Yes. What is the economy of France? What is the hope for France?
How do we see yourself? Are we optimistic about the future? Do we see the glass half empty or half full? Do we still have hope for greatness for France? Do we believe that Europe is maybe the best way to be strong again? It's something. It's like
the argument Sarkozy made in his first run.
Yeah, all the campaigns, every 5 years, all the campaigns, they are around unemployment and economics. What makes this,
and the role of the state in the economy.
Yes. But what makes this one very different, I think, and those who have been to France recently, I guess they would agree, is that people are still under shock by both the immigration, the wave of migrants from Syria, etc., and by the terrorist attack. Yeah. And that's why I insist on the cultural identity threat.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Charlie.
We'll be right back with Steve Ballmer, the former CEO of Microsoft, with an interesting new idea to assess the data about government spending. Stay with us.